Okay, so this is the second part of the presentation on research, and we're going to talk about doing research for papers. So I wanted to start by defining a couple of terms. Let's get this back over here. So primary and secondary research. So secondary research is most of the research that you're going to be doing. It's locating information that's discovered by other people, normally published in journals. Primary research is research you do yourself by collecting data and doing experiments in the real world. So if we talk about primary research, maybe you're doing a survey for a study that you're conducting. But secondary research would be if you publish the results of your study and someone else cited your research, then they would be doing secondary research on your primary research. Most people do primary research after secondary research, if they do it at all. It's easier to find what someone else has said than to try to do it yourself. So one of the first things you'll want to do with research is to form a research question. And a research question is kind of like a precursor to a thesis that guides your research from then on. You'll use it later on to develop keywords to input into databases that actually find your sources. So a good research question is the question around which you center your research. It should be clear and provide enough specifics that one's audience can understand the purpose without needing any additional explanation. It should be narrow enough that it can be answered thoroughly in the space that the writing task allows, so it should be focused. Ideally, it's expressed in the fewest words possible. It's concise. It's complex, meaning it's not answerable with a simple yes or no question, but rather requires synthesis and analysis of ideas and sources prior to composition of an answer. So, was the Declaration of Independence signed in 1776? That's not a good research question. You can input that very quickly into Google and find an answer. What were the conditions leading to the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776 would be a better research question because it involves sources and it's not something that you can just answer with yes or no. And a research question should be arguable. The potential answers are open to debate rather than just accepted facts. In a persuasive argumentative essay, which is most of what you're going to use research in, a research paper is just a persuasive argumentative essay with research. Your goal is to persuade someone of something, right? Well, there's no need to persuade it if everyone already knows it. So it's important that the research question be something that other people could disagree with, although you want to provide evidence that's going to make that disagreement as hard as possible for them. And probably most importantly, you should ask a question about an issue that you're genuinely curious or passionate about. If you're researching something that's boring, you're not going to want to research it. And it's going to show. You're going to do less high quality work. You're not going to be as interested in what you're reading. You're not going to get excited about it. It's just not going to be as much fun or as effective as it would be if you were researching something that you were passionate about. And I borrowed this from the Writing Center at GMU because it is a really nice explanation of a research question. So you can go there for more information on that if you'd like. So how do you form a research question? Well, you rephrase your goal statement or your thesis statement, your purpose statement, to make questions. So if your goal statement was, I want to convince audiences that Bengal cats are safe in residential community, then my research question might be what information supports the idea that Bengals are safe pets in residential communities. This presentation, parts of it were for my speech class, so you might hear me talk about speeches or audiences. The parts that are still there are equally applicable to papers, so you can just insert reader or paper instead of audience or speech. So let's say my thesis statement is Bengal cats should be considered safe pets because they are domestic cats. Other communities have already included them from lists of banned pets, and many pet owners testify that they are dedicated members of the family. So possible research questions might be, what data exists to show that Bengals are domestic rather than wild? What information can I find about communities that have removed these cats from banned pet lists? And what can I find about testimonials or narratives from pet owners and breeders showing that Bengals are safe? These are questions that might guide your research. So once you have a research question, the next step is going to be to create keywords, because most research today is done through searching databases rather than just sitting there with a pile of 50 books in the library. These require keywords to locate information, and they're kind of like academic search engines. Let me see if I can pull one up real quick. Sorry, I was watching something. Matter of fact, I might actually make another video going through. I'm not a current student, but I have permissions under it. So, list of electronic resources and databases. And we have some of them here. I'm going to choose one I know to show as an example. Okay, so here is a database. This is the MLA International Bibliography. And this is where you'd input your keywords right here to find the search you want. So I'll tell you how to do keywords in a second, but this is an example. So I would type in Marlowe Massacre at Paris, and I would find sources relating to Christopher Marlowe's Massacre at Paris. There aren't a whole lot of them because this isn't a particularly well-known play, but it's just a term that I thought of to put in there. So that is what a database looks like and where keywords come into play. Now let's go back over here. So keywords are a word or phrase that you'll input as your search term, and you'll want to use main ideas from your research question or your thesis statement. You want to create a list of as many keywords as you can think of that will help you locate it, because different keywords will get different results even with synonyms. If you use synonyms or industry-specific terms whenever possible. So let's say you were doing research on privacy with Facebook, we'll use Facebook. You might say something about PII, which is personally identifiable information, because that's the industry term for that, or terms of service or privacy policy, rather than just more general information like security, Facebook. So being as specific as possible can really help you out here. So more on creating keywords. So an example research questions might be what data exists to show Bengals are domestic rather than wild. We looked at this with these research questions a second ago. Some example keywords might be Bengal cats percentage wild. So that would help me find stuff to answer this one. Bengal cats percentage ALC. I happen to know that the wild cat that Bengals derive from is the Asian leopard cat and is often abbreviated ALC. So I might put Bengal cats percentage ALC or Bengal cats percentage Asian leopard cat to make it a more formal industry specific term than wild. Bengal cats banned pet lists, Bengal cats safe, breeder Bengal cats domestic, and Bengal cats domestic or wild. Now these last two may not give as many results in an academic search engine, and they're probably not going to give you the results that you want in Google, but they still are worth trying just to see what you get. You can always throw stuff to the side if you don't get the results that you want and revise the keywords if this doesn't give you the information that you need. So once you have your research questions or question, you can start thinking about the best types of sources to answer those questions. And it's a good idea to consider your audience when choosing sources. So most college classes require scholarly articles from the databases we looked at a second ago. But scholarly articles might not be the best choice when working with individuals with a lower level of education or the public in general. So the average American reads at the 8th grade level. Well, if you're writing a newspaper article for a wide audience, having a lot of technical information and a lot of very academic sources might be off-putting or confusing to that reader. So in that case, you might not want to use as many scholarly sources. But in college classes, you really will, because your audience is going to be a teacher who theoretically is an expert in the field and will have the knowledge and will have the backing and the experience to be able to understand that high-level academic research. So it is, in that case, that is definitely something you would want to use. So we'll start talking about a few types of sources. So on the internet, some main types are commercial web pages. These normally end in .com or .net. They're made by individuals and companies. Because they're maintained by a person who's trying to sell something or has a specific individual point of view, they are not generally biased, and they may be unreliable because they may not be peer-reviewed. Nonprofits normally end in .org. They normally are more reliable, but they often are still biased toward their cause. PETA, well, I don't know if PETA is a nonprofit anymore, but the people for the ethical treatment of animals. Well, you can find a lot of information on animal treatment on PETA, but it's going to be geared toward what PETA wants you to believe rather than being unbiased. Information from schools normally ends in edu, and that normally is reliable. It normally is published by academic professionals or teachers or the institutions themselves. And so it does tend to be either peer-reviewed formally or informally peer-reviewed in the form of my coworkers check it. Schools have a lot of pressure on them to provide academically solid information as well. So it is much more likely to be researched and much more likely to be good information. And also on the internet, you have scholarly sources. These are the ones found in databases. Access is often restricted to institutions like schools. They are published by reliable publishers normally, often specific lit mags, journals, things like that. Often peer-reviewed, often very, very highly researched. Online encyclopedias, these are things like Wikipedia. They're a great starting point for general information. I know it's not exactly popular to be okay with Wikipedia, but if you're looking for like a general overview, Wikipedia is really good. And it tends to be updated by people who care about the topic, and it tends to be really well sourced. Now, should you use Wikipedia in your research paper? No, you should not. It is viewed as less reputable. It is viewed as something that anyone can change, even though they do now have a lot of control on there. The perception is the big problem there. They do also tend to be pretty short overviews of information rather than really in-depth analysis, and they can be unreliable. But what you can do, and what I normally do, is go to Wikipedia, make a note of the list of sources at the bottom of the Wikipedia page, and then use those, go reference those to get more information as a really solid starting point, so you're not just kind of navigating the internet aimlessly. Also on the internet, you have blogs. These are web pages with frequently changing content that express personal views of an author. The credibility can vary. Sometimes you have blog writers that are experts in their field. Sometimes you have blog writers that are random Joe Schmoes just starting out on something. And so you really have to be very careful with blogs. I wouldn't use them in a research paper unless it was to like express the popular opinion on something. Similarly, social networks, Facebook, Instagram, etc., they often have many users, and again, credibility may vary because it's not peer reviewed and they're very difficult to provide sources on these sites. Again, this is not something that I would use at all in a research paper. So some types of print sources, I'm kind of going through these very quickly because we don't use them as often as we used to. So encyclopedias and dictionaries provide brief overviews or definitions of a topic. Books often provide more in-depth information. Articles, these are journal articles in academic journal. They tend to be more current. They're often intended to attract reader interest. They are sometimes, these are articles like newspaper articles, not journal articles. But they do tend to be current. They do tend to attract reader interest, and they can sometimes be biased depending on the needs of the publication. Additional print news media, so this is information published or recorded in the news or newspapers. Sometimes reliable, sometimes not, really depends. Statistical sources, these can be fun. These are volumes of demographics or basic facts. They're really useful in science papers especially. Biographies are accounts of a person's life or experience. Quotation books are sources that are documents of lists of quotes. And then you also have government documents as well. So we're going to stop here, and then I will pick back up with approaching research. And I'll